So help you God.
I do.
October 3rd, 1977. In the packed Supreme Court chambers of St. Paul, Minnesota, Rosalie Wahl was sworn in as the first woman Supreme Court justice in Minnesota history. It was the culmination of a lifetime of personal initiative and the result of a renewed strength in the women's movement. In accepting the appointment, Wahl promised to be an advocate for those whose rights had been denied or infringed upon. During her 17-year tenure as a Minnesota Supreme Court justice, she would chair the Task Force for Gender Fairness in the Courts, co-chair the Task Force on Racial Bias in the Judicial System, and participate in the court's trailblazing efforts to legally define sexual harassment in the workplace. Nationally, Wahl became known for her work to improve legal education, and in 1979, she was mentioned by the New York Times as a candidate to become the first woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court. In 1991, 14 years after her groundbreaking appointment, Wahl was a member of a Minnesota Supreme Court that was the first in the nation to have a majority of women. Sarah Rosalie Irwin was born August 27, 1924, in a small town in the rolling southeastern hills of Kansas. Her education in life began painfully early.
Well, my mother died before I was 4 years old, and I went to live, my sisters and I went to live with my grandparents, and I lived with my grandmother then for quite a long time. And they had me do things, or that not only let me do things, they required that I do things. I can remember going and getting the horses from the hill pasture when I was about 4 years old, trotting up the hill and bringing back those big old horses. And they minded, and I got to do a lot of things like that. They need it. Everybody's needed on a farm. They need your work. Makes you feel important.
Rosalie was only 7 years old when tragedy struck the family again. Lifting the gate at a railroad crossing, she witnessed the deaths of her grandfather and younger brother in a train accident near the family farm. With little money, like so many during the Depression, Rosalie and her grandmother did their best to carry on. Rosalie's Aunt Sarah helped to support them where she could. The household of strong women refused to let their family falter under the weight of such devastating losses.
My Aunt Sarah always said, she thought women should be able to earn their own living. She didn't touch, she was unmarried. She was unmarried by choice. And while most people did get married, Aunt Sarah said, you should be able to support yourself.
Education was important to the family, and Rosalie excelled in school. She served as co-editor of the school newspaper and was a county champion in spelling and arithmetic. As she grew older, Rosalie began to dream of going to college. When the time came, she applied and was accepted to the University of Kansas. Rosalie was a senior in high school when the United States entered World War II, and millions of American men left their regular lives to do their part in the conflict. When Rosalie started at the university in 1942, she found a campus run by women.
Well, I think those years that I was at the university, the war years, the men were gone from the campus. There were military units on the campus, but the women got to do everything. So it was the first time they got to be the editor of the Daily Kansan and the head of the yearbook and all of the jobs. We did all those things and had an opportunity to do it. And just kind of got the taste for it.
While at the university, Rosalie got involved with a variety of local organizations, including the campus YWCA.
I was active in the YWCA, and they were that's where I really became aware of social injustice and all the things that needed to be done. And so we had this house. The Y owned this house, and we thought it'd be a good idea to use it for something more in line with the purposes of the Y than just renting it out to graduate students. So we organized this house. It was a co-op, and it was interracial. There were, I guess, about five and five of each of different color, of different color.
At the time of Henley House's opening, it was the only interracial housing on campus, but within 2 years, all University of Kansas housing would become non-segregated. Rosalie would graduate with a degree in sociology in 1946. In August of the same year, she married Rosalie Wahl, the son of the dean of the Kansas Medical School and a connection of Aunt Sarah's. A confirmed pacifist, Ross had recently returned from military service in Europe, decorated with a Bronze Star. With a like-minded husband, Rosalie Wahl's thoughts turned increasingly to community involvement and cooperative living. On a business trip, Ross visited a new cooperative settlement at Circle Pines, Minnesota, and the family decided to uproot and move to the new community.
So then we came to Minnesota. We came in 1949. We got here in February. We immigrated, and I suppose for the reasons that people emigrate. You know, it was a hopeful place, and we wanted to build a new life.
In 1955, after 6 years at the cooperative community, the Wahls left Circle Pines, moving their family of 6 to a rural home outside of Lake Elmo. Rosalie once again immersed herself in the new community as she fought to establish a county library system and became the first woman to be elected president of the local PTA. But expenses were bearing down on the family.
I was 16 years away from graduation, from college, and here we are with 4 children, and I'm thinking, you know, we needed some more income, and what could I do? And it seemed like I needed more education, so, and also it was an opportunity to not have to go out and earn money all at once. I got to have some time going to school. And
thus, in 1962, at the age of 38, Rosalie Wahl began taking classes at William Mitchell Law School. One of only 2 female students at William Mitchell, Wahl studied hard and did well despite her competing responsibilities.
Well, it was like all those years when we were out here that I was putting supper on the table and going out the door at 5:45 to go to law school.
Wahl graduated in 1967 and soon found a job working for the State Public Defender's Office. Because of the nature of her job, she didn't win many cases, but she remained dedicated and her reputation grew. In 1973, she developed a clinical teaching curriculum for William Mitchell that got students out of the classroom and put their book learning into practice. In the early 1970s, she became a founding member of the Minnesota Women Lawyers Association. Among their efforts was an initiative for informing the governor of the wealth of talented and ambitious women available for positions in the judiciary.
We made a questionnaire that we were going to send to all the members, all the women lawyers, and find out what their special interests were and what they'd be willing to do. You know, would they like to serve on this board or that, or would they be willing to serve on the bench? And we sent these out, and I got one in the course of events. And I didn't send it back for a year because I really didn't know how to answer that question. But would I be willing to be a judge?
The judges she had met and argued before in the past had seemed to fit a distinct and rigid mold, one that she did not and could not fit herself. Yet her life had already taken many twists and turns, and she had broken the mold again and again along the way.
I just thought, well, you know, there comes a point when if you're urging the appointment of women, you just have to put up or shut up.
In 1977, under intense political pressure, Governor Rudy Perpich promised that his next appointment to the Minnesota Supreme Court would be a woman. On June 3rd of that year, Rosalie Wahl took the stage to announce her appointment in front of a frenzied crowd at the historic Minnesota Women's Meeting in St. Cloud. To uproarious applause and even tears, Wahl spoke of the significance of the day.
But St. Cloud was really exciting. The women there, it was a great day, and for all these years afterwards, you know, I'd meet somebody and they'd say, we were at St. Cloud, and we'd just stand there holding each other's hand.
Beginning in a one-room schoolhouse in rural Kansas and ending up in the marble halls of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Rosalie Wahl blazed a new path, breaking down barriers along the way, all the while maintaining a vision for a better world.
Made progress, but you have to keep remembering, or you know, you have to keep working at it, because if you turn around and look the other way, it'll just all go back to the way it was. It's gotten better. It's gotten better. Pretty exciting. It still is.